go. And today we have a very special speaker and a very special topic in the spirit of Valentine's Day. It's called the, oh, we're going to just put people on mute who are not speaking yet. It's called the Conjunctio, the sacred marriage of our inner masculine and feminine. So we're really excited to dive into this topic. But before doing so, Sean, I'd first like to just welcome you to our weekly Fireside Chat.
Thank you very much. I feel very grateful to be here.
Amazing. So what we like to do before jumping into the topic is just to get to know our guests a little bit better on a personal level and really draw a connection between your personal story and the topic of today's chat. So we'd love for you just to tell us a little bit more about you and how it leads us to the Conjunctio.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my background is in classical Chinese medicine and really the osteopathic expression of that tradition, which is manual therapy or sometimes called bone setting. So it's really hands-on. The treatments are working with the person for about an hour to an hour and a half, and that allows a certain type of connection and closeness with patients that many times by working through the tissues, a lot of emotional, a lot of mental processes are expressed. And oftentimes that has to do with the heart and the relationship and just people's process as human beings coming into themselves. So to back up of how I got into that, just from an early age, I was really drawn to this ability or this possibility of human beings helping others just through touch. The idea of laying on of hands or stories of people helping other people out just through touch alone was very intriguing to me. So that brought me into a lot of study of energetic medicine, of different, massage therapy, different manual therapy techniques. At the same time, I grew up in the 80s and 90s. So of course, Bruce Lee and action movies was, the thing. And as a young boy, that really spoke to me. And that got me on the path of studying martial arts, which eventually took me to an association that I met my teacher, Vince Black, who he mentored under a gentleman in Taiwan who held that if you want to learn the martial arts, you have to learn the medical arts at the same time. And so that really put me on the path that I am now, in which my medical training was married to martial art and a physical culture, in which we were led into cultivating yourself and your own energy. So then when you went to express it, you did so in a therapeutic means. And so I did it like a traditional apprenticeship for about 8 years, apprenticing in private clinics, and then eventually decided to take that professionally for myself. At the time, I was in Flagstaff, Arizona, and then I moved to Portland, Oregon, where I went to acupuncture school for 4 years. Started a clinic there, met my partner, had one child. When we were about to have a second child, we moved to Beacon, New York, had our daughter there, started another clinic. I was also working with a friend who's a physical therapist, and we started an integrated clinic in Manhattan. So I would commute into Manhattan and work as well as work in our local clinic. And in this whole process, as relationships, rise and fall, and kids and the stress of life, my partner and I broke up and divorced. And that really got me really from my own personal place of heartache, of pain, of loneliness, really looking at matters of the heart and really looking at how love comes in and out of our life, and how that applies to our overall unfolding as individuals and humans.
Wow. Well, thank you for that that overview. And yeah, maybe we can just continue from that point. So how does love flow in and out of our lives? And, what have you learned in your healing process about the nature of love?
Well, yeah, thank you very much. From in school, I also mentored in my formal acupuncture studies, mentored with this scholar and Dr. Heiner Fruhoff, who really went into a lot of the ancient recording, ancient texts, and brought out a lot of old, Taoist cosmology, which is based on yin and yang, or based on male and female principles, which doesn't necessarily correlate to man, woman, but it correlates to that every expression in the universe is this blend of yin and yang energies to all the different degrees. And that attraction of yin and yang, so it's said that from the void comes the Tao, which is this understanding that there is just one energy in the universe. And then from the Tao comes the yin, and the yang comes the two. So that's a polarization of the singularity. And then that attraction of the two poles creates the third thing. And then from there, the manifest world comes into being. So in many ways, love is that attraction between yin and yang, is that attraction between masculine and feminine, or positive and negative, that then creates the manifest world, creates the world that we're living in. So you can see love as the energy of God, or the goddess, or the God and goddess coming together. You can see it as the fundamental physics of the world that allows things to come into being. And in many ways is the deep yearning within all of us for connection, and for meaning, and for value.
So, when it comes to your philosophy on the masculine and the feminine, can you share a little bit more about just kind of this dynamic, the yin, the yang, how we should be thinking about it as conscious individuals, how it impacts our mood, how it impacts our state, how it impacts how open we are to connecting with another person?
Yeah, for sure. Well, yin and yang, if you look at the symbol, the Taiji symbol, which is, sometimes popularized in surfing culture, and just new age culture in general, which is it comes from two fish. Are you familiar? I'm sure people are familiar with it. So it's like a teardrop, a black teardrop and a white teardrop, and each of the drops have the opposite color within it. And so it comes from an ancient painting of two fish swimming around each other. So the idea is that these two polar forces in the universe are simultaneously creating each other, destroying each other, holding each other in balance, and actually have aspects of the other within it. And so the idea that everything is one thing. If everything is one thing, then how can it really experience itself? How can it have an idea of what it is and what it's capable of? And so to create almost a dream of separation, a dream of difference, in which now relationship can be formed. So yin and yang, or masculine, feminine, positive, negative, is always within relationship. So for example, you can say, well, if you look at water, that can have a little bit more of a yin or feminine quality. But when you see it in comparison to the beach, the waves rising and falling and having a lot of active motion actually has a more yang or masculine expression to it. So just because something might be feminine, it doesn't mean it's 100% feminine. Just because something is masculine, it doesn't mean it's 100% masculine or yang. And I know that gendered words and vocabulary can be charged. So I really want everybody to kind of breathe into this idea that it's an energetic and not necessarily having to do with the biology that we present with. And that's an important piece. And so with that being said, within any expression, there's going to be positive and negative, masculine and feminine qualities. So when we come into relationship, that's a dynamic that's always changing. Like, for example, right now I'm speaking and everybody else is listening. So I have a more of a yang expression right now, whereas everybody else has more of a yin so I'm giving, and then people who are receiving will be more yin. And then when I'm quiet and I'm listening, then the dynamic changes. And the important piece, especially in love, that we all really appreciate is that polarization, that we are attracted to this seemingly opposite thing, and that creates a charge. And that charge can be described as eros within this kind of romantic or loving relationship. And in many ways, beyond even a romantic relationship, eros can just be seen as this field of value. A modern day philosopher, contemporary scholar, Mark Gaffney, kind of talks about this a lot, of how eros is this common field of value in which things arise in the universe, and that thing has an inherent goodness, has an inherent value to it. And from that value, it attracts other similar things to it. And then when those two things connect, then a third thing is created, or another thing is created, which in and of itself has its own value. So the way that we are expressing in our relationships, and the way that we are attracting different people into our own relational fields, is actually an expression of not only our value, but of the value of the people we're relating with, or the things we're relating with, whether it's our family or our work, our exercise, our health, our entertainment, whatever it may be.
So for someone who's not attracting the type of partner they'd like to attract, what sort of guidance do you give them?
So this is where the intermarriage for me becomes very exciting. So I heard recently a wonderful statement. I don't know if it's a quote, and I don't quite know where it comes from, but the idea that if your life isn't a mythology, then it becomes a pathology. And if we're all connected through a common energy, if we're all connected through a singular force, and that force we can conceive of as love, then essentially everything that we see as separate from us is really just a reflection of the same energy. So we're all reflecting each other, so to speak. And in many ways, like what I am saying right now isn't necessarily even me. What you're hearing and what you're seeing, you're evoking through your own neurobiology. So really all of this is kind of happening inside you. So in many ways, this presentation that I'm speaking to you is a representation of actually yourself. And so I feel when we come into the world, when we come out of the world, when we are born, we're moving from this space of universal unconditional love. And you can see that in children so remarkably, of the joy that they have, the spontaneity, the way that they're in the moment, and that love is just radiating out of them. What I feel happens though, and it, not necessarily as like an evil thing or a bad thing or whatever, but there is a moment where that innocence is broken, and that innocence is shattered, or we come from this space of unconditional love, and then we're in this world that has consequence and pain, and sometimes that open heartedness of ourselves can get broken, can get hurt, can get traumatized. And oftentimes that is in relationship to a particular parent. And as we're moving into the world and we're imprinting on all the things around us, we're imprinting with different levels of what is yin, what is yang, what is masculine, what is feminine. And our initial kind of insult to our innocence as children kind of sets us up now that that child stays within us in a certain way and is now waiting for reparation and for that innocence to be reclaimed, but as adults. So what I feel is that as we move into the world as adults and we are attracted by the value of others, when we start looking for a partner, or our partner finds us, really what we're doing is that we're actually seeking a certain resonance that's going to mirror that fall from innocence as we are as for kids. So in many ways, when we're moving into romantic relationships, we're almost moving into a space where our heart can break, which is a different way of looking at relationships. But the benefit to that, in my opinion, is that we move into a place where actually the scared little kid who was hurt comes out of hiding, and that resonance of what was needed to bring that child forward is then given to us in that relationship. Then through that heartbreak, we have this amazing time now to sit within ourselves, and then to look to our inner opposite, to develop actually a marriage within ourselves. So if someone has more masculine energy, then there's going to be a piece of that becoming within to become a whole being, where that masculine energy is going to need to find their inner feminine, and vice versa. And so I think we see this in especially like Disney cartoons, that these stories are actually stories of our inner children who are looking for redemption or looking to be saved. So for example, like a lot of stories about princesses has to do with the inner feminine that's either asleep, or the inner feminine that needs to be saved from a high tower being, guarded by some kind of dragon or monster. And that represents like the inner feminine in us that needs to be awakened, that needs to be protected, that needs to be held and contained. And vice versa, we see, stories about a prince that is either this animal, this scary, vicious kind of beast, or maybe an ugly toad, or something that is very unbecoming. And it needs this open-hearted, unconditional love of the feminine to come and accept him and bring him out of a more vicious or kind of ugly nature, so that the prince can then become a king, or the princess can then become a queen. So really, as we move into relationships, I think it's super important that we actually see, like, how is this person mirroring in me the qualities that I need to fall in love with to awaken my own inner opposite, or to fortify the king and the queen that is inside of me. Does that make sense?
Starting to. So maybe you can talk a little bit about like love versus lust, and kind of these different attachment styles, and what, like, what are some practical steps within ourselves to really become aware of our different energies, to feel that inner marriage maybe before we enter into a partnership with someone else.
Yeah. Well, that's a tricky question, because you're never going to be able to really prepare yourself for the partnership. It's like the partnership in itself is the proving grounds for your heart. You can do a lot of work on yourself, which is, I think, really important, and a lot of self-care. I think there is where the concentration can really be generative, of how do you take care of yourself? How do you maintain your body, your diet? How do you relax and let go of stress? How do you move certain emotions, in order for them to move cleanly through your body? But really, when you're in a relationship, that's when we get blindsided. That's when, everything that we try to prepare for, that could just like fall right through, because we're actually in this space where oftentimes we're catapulted back into this place where we were children. And sometimes that the child within us could be moving from even a pre-verbal space, could be moving from more of a very innocent place where these larger concepts doesn't make sense. And so it's really hard to kind of translate. So I would say that for us, like well, for me, I'll speak for myself, that like a very honest inventory of my own childhood, my own relationship to my father and my mother, and seeing that actually as how I imprinted on different qualities of masculine and feminine energy. And not necessarily that all my masculine imprinting came from my father, although a lot of it did. And not necessarily all my feminine imprinting came from my mother, although much of it did. And so to start thinking more in an archetype or a transpersonal way of saying, like, how did these energies happen into my life, and then look at the partners or the patterns in the relationships that I've had in the past, and where are the similarities, where, and ultimately, how are my relationships calling my inner child forward? And even if it's painful, even if it's coming through betrayal, even if it's something that hurts, it gives me the opportunity to actually sit down with my own inner child. And if I have more of a masculine leaning, then I actually need to work within myself to find more patience, understanding, emotional intelligence, to bring my own feminine energy online, and so that I can actually hold my own inner child. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's helpful. When it comes to lust versus love, I'd still just love to explore, because
Yeah.
when we look at the graph, we have lust as like almost the lowest frequency, and then we have
Mhm.
love as like the highest frequency, or one of them. So it's just
Yeah.
interesting to get your take on kind of, there's going to be an attraction, but like what differentiates it from being love versus lust.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I think that can be approached in many different directions. What's alive for me now is that lust has this, or desire in general, has this beautiful ability to bring you to where what you're attracted to. It's centered. You can see it in the center, in the middle of the pelvis, the second chakra, or your center of gravity, and is really what we're using for our locomotion. So when we're looking around and we're seeing things, and we're attracted to things by the way that they smell, or the way that they taste, the way that they sound, the way that they look, and then we move towards it. So really, just because we're attracted to something doesn't mean we need to commune with it. Just because we're attracted to something doesn't mean we need to consume it, so to speak. So it seems like the lust is the first step to get ourselves inspired to actually move and to explore and to overcome, like, a very basic fear of difference, or a basic fear of maybe failure, or a fear of something that might be out there that feels scary. So our lust, or our desire, brings us toward. Now, once we get into the space, I think it's really important to realize that desire in and of itself is never meant to be fulfilled. Desire in and of itself is just meant to be desirous. It's like, that's the energy of desire. But once you arrive, and now you're in front of the person or the thing that you've been attracted to, now you have to call into presence your whole self, which involves your feelings and involves your thinking. And there needs to be a resonance in the whole body for that to be a yes. So in many consent spaces, there's this idea of a whole body yes. So you may be attracted, and that attraction might be more of an animal kind of like body pelvic attraction, but maybe your heart isn't really fully being felt. And maybe there's things in your mind that you really need to look at with some foresight, and maybe compare it to some past actions. And in many ways, that's a yin and a yang, a masculine and a feminine balancing within yourself, of being able to bring a certain amount of temperance or balance between what you're desiring and what you actually have a larger knowing or intuitive understanding of what is in your best interest, you know?
Yeah. Also, anyone in the audience who is curious to jump into the Q&A, feel free to just drop some questions in the chat, and we'll field them accordingly.
Mm.
A lot of times in the spiritual community, the word sacred is thrown around. So what does sacred mean to you, and specifically, what does sacred sexuality mean to you?
Mm. Yeah, sacred. That's really interesting because in many ways you can see every single thing in the manifest world as sacred. So what is the mundane? What is the sacredness of it? And sacred comes from the word sacrifice. So to make something sacred comes from this idea that you're actually cutting away certain either distractions or certain mindsets and really paying attention to whatever you see as sacred is. It's, in my opinion, really stepping into the inherent value of any given thing or any given situation, and really holding that value and understanding the larger connection into the greater fabric of reality, and to see that that thing that seems separate to me is actually a part of me. And how do I honor the value in it as like I would honor the value in me? And how do I afford dignity to everything that I'm encountering, even if I don't agree with it, even if I don't necessarily resonate with it? And so sacredness is, in my opinion, holding that value of something else. And then sacred sexuality is now entering into this place of where, if eros is this expression of goodness and value, expression of this attractiveness, of when I sit down with another person and I am this full body yes, I'm honoring that our attraction through the masculine and feminine that's expressing through our bodies, even if we share the same gender or even if we're different genders, that is actually an expression of what has created the whole universe. I mean, not just the sex that our parents had, but it is holding this space in which the creative juiciness of the universe is right there. And so oftentimes it causes people to slow down and to just really appreciate every breath, really appreciate the eye gaze, really appreciate the touch. And it doesn't have to be even necessarily sexualized. That there's this whole space where you're in the moment and you're seeing the value in the other person. And so every step is a yes. Every step it has this awareness to it, and there's a certain amount of devotion to each process, and devotion to the person that you're working with, devotion to your own energy, and seeing how they merge.
That was beautiful. Thank you for that definition. Ali's asking, do you have any personal practices that you work with when you feel like your internal masculine, feminine is out of balance?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ali. That's a great question. I do. My personal practice comes from qigong and internal boxing or internal martial arts. So there's a lot of awareness training. There's a lot of standing meditation, moving meditation, sitting meditation, and in that, what I have come to practice on my own is feeling my own vertical of my own sense of perpendicular alignment to the earth, sitting down, standing up, and how that my different centers of being, so my pelvic center being more for my physical, my perceptual center in my brain or in my cranium being more for my kind of mental, intellectual, and then my heart center being in the middle of the two for more of my feeling or emotional, and how that vertical alignment moves, and does it feel like all three centers can actually stack on top of each other and sit easily. From there, I move into a practice, and we could even do this a little bit, or you can do it at home, is that as you sit and you feel your vertical center, you can reach out to the left, and feel to the left side of your body and the left side of your being, which is the can symbolize the sacred feminine within us. And at the same time, reach out to the right, either with your arms or with just your feeling. And when you hold the two together and you feel how the two relate, you can start to get a sense Like, does my left side feel far away? Or does my left side feel really, really close? You know, does my right side, where's my right side in relationship to my center? And then really work to kind of feel like where those perceptual pillars are in your field of awareness. And you can do it with your eyes open, you can do it with your eyes closed, and you get a lot of information of where your left side or your right side, how it is sitting in alignment to your center. One step further is then allow that sense of the left to actually take shape into a shape of a woman. Allow the right side, that sense of the right side, to take shape into the shape of a man. And sit with that. What do they look like? What qualities do they have? Are they actually the qualities that you are attracted to? You know, are they in pain? Is there any distress? Is there any joy? Is there anything for them to share with you? And then finally, what I often do is that I have them then look at each other through me and allow them to have a loving gaze on each other, just like I might look at a person that I'm attracted to. I have my inner masculine and feminine look at me, and to see me like as the middle of their attraction.
So it seems like you've really developed your imagination, uh, to kind of have
and
those concepts in your mind. Go ahead. Yeah.
and really, like, that was my last part, is that this idea of like being born again, when we can really bring our masculine and feminine online and we can really hold ourselves as a complete individual, then we actually call our divine child that still lives within us forward. And the beautiful thing, especially having two kids myself, what I really came to appreciate is that when my children play, when they're in a state of play and imagination, it's not entertainment for them. It's not this sense of escape. I mean, it is real. They are so deep in their imaginative play, that is real for them. And we know through different like neurobiology studies that the theta brainwave is the most predominant brainwave in children, like all the way up to 6. And theta is more of a space of dreaming. So it's like kids are living in this imaginal realm where what they are imagining is true. So how do we bring that inner child online in us so that we can actually play with the universe? So that we can actually imagine the most beautiful, best life possible for us and actually play in that space. And then when we're held together, then when we find a lover or a partner, a husband or a wife, it's actually the space where our inner children play together. It's not like you complete me. It's like, oh no, I depend on you for this, or now you have to do this for me. It's like we hold each other and we hold each other accountable and responsible for our own, happiness, our own beingness. And now when we come together, we're playing like we used to as kids.
Yeah. I love that. I
Yeah.
feel playful already. Mingling asks that sometimes when you're aware of yourself, there's a hyper awareness and sensitivity when it comes to relationships. So, how do you combat that hyper awareness where you are also present in the moment and follow the flow of the relationship?
Yeah.
Sense?
Thank you for saying that, because yeah, in this state there is a huge um, potential sometimes for over process, and I think really that's where play has to come forward. Like, we have to laugh at ourselves, we have to laugh with each other, and we have to keep it light. And then really on top of that, when that hyper awareness of yourself is wonderful, and to use that hyper awareness as an ability to stay accountable to your own process and your own space, and not necessarily turn that towards the other, where I'm certainly guilty of looking at somebody else and judging, how they're not where I want them to be. So like, to try to stay in your own lane or on the side of the road, so to speak, so that you can be taking care of yourself and bringing, your most playful quote unquote innocent self forward to meet somebody else where they're at. And if you don't play nice with another person, then you can find another sandbox or playground or group of playmates.
Don't you think though a lot of people have kind of forgotten how to play? So it's not even like a starting point to tell them, hey, just be light, just play. It's like they're so disconnected from that energy that they don't even know what it means.
Yeah, yeah, without a doubt. I mean, and that's kind of an inherent dysfunction within our society, where instead of saying, okay, I need to go inside, I need to insend, I need to come to my center and get an awareness of where my physical, my emotional, my intellectual centers may be. Now I'm looking to the outside world to complete myself. I'm looking for a partner who's going to be the partner that I need, want to complete me. I'm looking for the job that's going to really validate me. Now I'm going to look for the community that's going to either push me up onto a pedestal or really validate me for who I think I am. I'm going to need things. I'm going to need status. I'm going to need likes. I'm going to need all these different things. And so all of a sudden we're no longer playing, we're toiling, we're laboring and we're competing. And that just, yeah, that kills the party.
Um, so a few things that I've been reflecting on over the years, kind of we're living in this modern era, right? Very industrial, informational, urban, millions of people everywhere. So very different than our 150 person tribes that we used to hunt and gather in.
Right.
But our biology is the same effectively. So a lot of our reactions to this environment are based in, kind of this historical environment in which we evolved. And when it comes to, relationships and, how we would bear and raise and nurture children as like a village or as like a collective, there's been a lot of talk about how you would have 10 parents all taking care of you and, kind of this just cohesiveness of a small group of people who are all nurturing children together. In addition to that, you had, mothers all over the world for the first year of life would have their children attached to them physically. So there was this warmth for an entire year, basically, of life. So that's all been ripped away from us. And I'd just be curious to know kind of how you see that, potentially being addressed, right, in today's modern culture, modern world, modern romance. Like, how does it play out in terms of how people relate in relationships? And is there any way we could, kind of bring back some of that energy that we needed as humans that we're not currently receiving?
Yeah, that's the question, right? I think that's the imperative of um, of how we move back into community with ourselves and the planet. In many ways, the giraffes is a wonderful, example of we have to reform networks in which we can both celebrate but also surrender into. In many ways, like cancel culture, for example, is so dangerous because the a fate worse than death was exile. When we are these tribal beings, we are these communal beings who like really thrive when we're in community. And to this idea that we're going to be ostracized and kicked out of the community, and now we move through these spaces editing ourselves, like, am I going to say the right words? Am I going to say the right things? Am I going to offend somebody? And if I do so, it's like we're so quick to get cut out. So I really feel like there needs to be a movement in which we can form community, but that community actually needs to have not just the love and the light and the celebration and everything's wonderful, We also need to embrace the dark too, where we can move into a space where we can be messy, where we can feel these deep, painful traumas of when we weren't next to our mother's breast for a year. You know what I mean? Maybe a couple months, maybe there was a whole generation where we couldn't even be breastfed, you know, where we didn't have a father that showed to us this very healthy expression of masculinity. You know what I mean? Like we're raised in many ways, not just from fathers, but just from society in general, of like this very toxic expression of dominance and authority and war and all this stuff. Like we have some very deep wounds, and our children are scared. So how can we get into a space in which, one, we can be messy and people can hold us and say, I got you, like go ahead and break down, like be accountable for your actions, don't hurt anybody, don't be violent per se, but it's okay for you to be emotional, and it's okay for you to say things that you don't necessarily mean because that those emotions are moving. And it's okay for me to give you feedback that might not just be all light and love. Like, I mean, love for sure, but it might not be like all compliments, you know? So like how we can, like a true community in which we can hold each other accountable, how we can hold each other, to our own greatness. Um, there's actually a story that my mother told me of a tribe in Africa where when a woman, do I have a little bit of time to share this?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
where a woman, when she is in her third trimester, she'll have an intuitive knowing, and she'll call the closest women to her in that tribe, and they'll go to, again, a sacred spot, which is, seen ancestrally as a place that they do this. And the women all hang out, and she sits with her unborn child and is downloaded the name or the song for this child. And and so after she gets the song, she teaches it to the rest of the women. And then that group of women come back to the tribe and then teach it to the entire tribe. And then when the baby is being born and the woman is going through the throes of labor, then the entire tribe is singing the name or the song of this child. And then the child comes into the community. Now, the only other times that song will be sung for the person is when they're married and then when they die. And then there's only one other time that song will be sung, and it's when the person has created or has like done such a wrong that they're on brink of being exiled, that they have committed such a heinous crime, and everybody is kind of up, in awareness about it. And what they'll do is that they'll surround the person and then sing them that song. And then one by one, the person, the tribes people will remind them of like who they are. Like when you were young, I saw you play like this, or when you were married, you had so much love, or you did this for me, you did that for me. And so like how do we actually hold each other accountable to our greatest expression of selves, and hold each other to a sense of safety and a sense of righteousness in our community? But how can we do that? By reminding people of the love that we have inside, and that how that love can come out and be shared with the community.
Yeah. Wow. That I definitely feel that in my body. It's so beautiful. Just this idea of a group of people who know each other, who love each other, who support each other, who hold each other accountable. It really does seem like the formula or the recipe for the highest, human experience on this planet. And so many people are so far from it,
Yeah.
uh, for one reason or another. And yeah, even just thinking about like that birth experience versus like in a hospital,
Yeah.
like
Right.
a cold, sterile environment, and just
Right.
like how that informs a newborn's energy.
Yeah.
Is really just such a contrast. Um, so yeah, I guess, one idea that came to me, and this is obviously not a full solution, but as AI becomes more conversational and more avatar-like, and you could have, you know, basically I could have this conversation with an avatar
Mm.
that's, powered by AI. It looks like you, it sounds like you, it talks like you, but it's not you, right? It's a supercomputer, but it's, it has the program to be able to provide the fatherly experience for me, the motherly experience for me,
Mhm.
bring, out some questions and evoke certain parts of my inner child, kind of like holding the space for me um,
Mhm.
on Zoom, and then potentially even in real life with like robots that kind of look human and, are programmed to serve this purpose of really helping people heal and like reconnect to themselves. And even though it's
Mhm.
one-on-one, and not like in a group setting. I mean, there could also be like a VR experience where you are in this
Yeah.
community of 150 people who are all there to
Mhm.
support you, right? So
Right.
there could
Mm.
be there could be a world where we kind of have this synthetic approach to healing, because not everyone has access to the space or the content or the consciousness or the culture. They could still plug in, to some virtual world or internet world where they
Yeah.
can actually experience, this like really deep sense of being held and being
Yeah.
seen and heard, which is really what we're all craving. That's like this universal need that's really not being met for many people in the
Yeah.
modern world. So just curious to hear your thoughts on the way
Well,
technology be able to usher in some healing.
yeah, I mean, that's such a rich topic for, that could be hours and hours in a discussion in of itself. But really what came to me was like, I feel that this is like such an inherent piece of our humanity. And because we are consciousness that is conscious of itself, conscious of creation, is that we're moving into this space of being co-creators. That I feel like going way back, like even into the beginnings of like European mythology, like Greek mythology, that all these different stories about the different gods and goddesses was this type of almost AI, this type of artificial intelligence that kind of spoke to different archetypes, different transpersonal energies that could move in and out of our life and help us make sense of the outside world. And that theater, in many ways, was just that, a very gifted actor that could actually channel a certain energy and then give a download to the audience of what does it mean to have like the goddess of agriculture move through you and address you. What about the god of war? What about the goddess of love? And in many ways, if we're going to program a computer, it would be very, very similar to how these different downloads and energies of the type of masculine and feminine almost stimulation that we would need to bring more of an internal balance to ourselves. So I think even if we're doing it now with VR sets and different things, I think we've been attempting this for millennia. And I think all like entertainment has its roots in this old kind of transpersonal shamanic space
Mm,
of where we get outside of our personality and we realize that we have these deep universal energies moving through us.
mm,
And sometimes they're at odds, And so how are we bringing resolution to that? So again, so that our inner prince and our inner princess can meet and we can become royal. We can
mm,
become kings and queens within ourselves. Is that almost to become like, almost like a god-like figure in the sense that you are sovereign and you are in control of this conscious co-creation of this beautiful world around us, that we enter into the ecosystem as contributing factors. not just consumers of resources.
Mhm. Very empowering. Would you say that gratitude is a more masculine energy or a more feminine energy?
That's a great question. Immediately what came to me was both, because I think I can act in gratitude, which would bring energy out of me towards you, and then I can actually receive and have that gratitude evoked in me.
Mm.
Um, yeah, in many ways, I think it, at least in me, inspires more of a feminine relaxation, more of an opening, more of an ability to receive and be heart forward. Um, and so, yeah, I would
Mm.
say both, with a tendency towards the yin.
Mm-hmm. And Mahilani asks, if we balance the divine masculine and feminine within us, do we need a relationship, like a marriage, for example, or could a relationship take the form of a community?
Yeah, great question. I think that's where it's totally up to you. Like, really, I think what what I try to be cautious of is that, why do I need a relationship? Do I need somebody to make me happy? Do I need somebody to make me healthy? Do I need somebody to make me feel valuable and valid? Like, it's nice to have all that reflected back to me, for sure. And it's nice to have somebody cheerleading me. And it's nice to have somebody, looking into my shadow, and helping me along the way, for sure. But I think once we balance our own divine feminine and masculine, then actually we are owning a lot of our own kind of self responsibility, and then taking that those hooks that we put into other people, taking those expectations that we're putting on other people, and then really giving them free reign to be who they are. So again, it's like we're playing together. We're like divine play partners, playing out this cosmic dance in which our own masculine and feminine mixing can create a child, which then binds us together, or it can create a project. It can help create a community. And really, the way that we move, like, through our own relationships, whether they're romantic or platonic, is really just is up to us. Is up to what feels fantastic for each of us. And that's never going to be exactly the same across the board. It's like, I think the divine loves to play through us and doesn't necessarily want to play the same game over and over again, just like we don't. So it's like, as we move into this expression and we hold ourselves, we give everybody else permission to hold themselves. So when we come together, we come without the subtle hooks that are being like, I need you, I can't let you go. If you come into my life, then there's all these stipulations that you have to, like, hold. There's all these contracts and stuff like that. I think that relaxes a lot and it gives space for joy and for play and for understanding. you know
Final question. Do you think giraffes have more masculine energy or more feminine energy?
Well, it would I would have to say there would be more of a yang expression with that really long, tall neck and that ability to see very far.
Right, right. But those eyelashes,
Yeah, right.
perfect balance, perfect balance. Well, Sean, this has been a true pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you to all the amazing giraffes on the call,
Yeah,
for
thank you.
your questions and for your attention. We're excited to see you again next Wednesday.
Yeah.
It'll be a later one due to time constraints. And hope to see some of you this Saturday. We'll be hosting a brunch in Venice. So thanks again.
Okay. Thank you all very much. I appreciate you.